Now that we know what polynomials are, as well as how to add and subtract them, let's look at how to multiply them. And most people learn this as this idea of FOIL. This stands for first, outer, inner, last. So if I have a generic binomial times a binomial, the idea is I multiply my first two terms, a times c, my outside two terms, a times d, my inside two terms, b times c, and then my last two terms, b times d. And while this can be very helpful, it only works if I'm multiplying a binomial by a binomial. But the idea can be expanded. You'll notice I multiplied everything in the second parentheses by a and everything in the second parentheses by b. So let's do some examples and see how this works and how we might be able to expand it. I have the example 4x plus 3 times 3x minus 6. And we can do the idea of foiling this. We start with our first two terms, 4x times 3x. 4 times 3 is 12, and x times x is x squared. My outside two terms, 4x times negative 6x. 4 times negative 6 is negative 24, and then I also had an x. Inside two terms, 3 times 3x is 9x. And then finally, my last two terms, 3 times negative 6 is negative 18. And we can see that our middle terms combine. We have a 24x and a 9x. So negative 24 plus 9 is negative 15x. So my final answer, 12x squared minus 15x minus 18. The next one that I'll look at, we can no longer FOIL since it's a binomial times a trinomial. But like I said, we can expand this idea. We start with this 2x term in the first parentheses. I'm going to do 2x times x squared. That gives me 2x cubed. I then do 2x times 5x. 2 times 5 is 10, and x times x is x squared. I then have a 2x times a negative 1, which will be minus 2x. And now I've reached the end of the second parentheses. So I move to my next term, negative 4. Negative 4 times x squared is minus 4x squared. Minus 4 times 5x, that's minus 20x. Minus 4 times minus 1 is plus 4. And I've reached the end of my second parentheses again. And so now I can start combining like terms. We can see we have a 10x squared and a minus 4x squared. That gives me a 6x squared. I also have minus 2x minus 20x. That would be minus 22x. And then I have a plus 4. When multiplying these polynomials, there are some shortcuts that we can use sometimes as well. My first one, a plus b times a minus b is a squared minus b squared. So let's see if we can do an example of this. I have a 3x plus 2 and a 3x minus 2. And if you're not comfortable using this formula, you can absolutely FOIL this thing out. But for now, I want to see if I can try to figure out how to use the formula. We need to first figure out exactly what a and b are. Well, we have a right here. It's just 3x. And then b is the next term, which is 2. And it's important to note that we know we can use this formula because the only difference between the first and second parentheses here is this sign in the middle. The first one has a plus 2, the second one has a minus 2. So my formula says a squared minus b squared. 3 squared is 9, and x squared is x squared. 2 squared is 4. So I have 9x squared minus 4. My next one has to do with a square. A plus b squared is a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. For this one, I'm going to do 2x plus 3 squared. And we can absolutely write it as 2x plus 3 times 2x plus 3 and FOIL it. So if you're not comfortable with the formula, you can absolutely multiply it out using other methods. In this case, a needs to be the first part of the parentheses, in this case 2x, b the second part, the 3. My formula then says to square the first plus 2 times a times b plus square the second. 2x squared is 4x squared. 2 times 2 times 3 is 12x. And 3 squared is 9. So I have my solution here. Changing the last one slightly, if I have a minus in between that a and b, so a minus b squared, that would change the sign of the middle term. It would give me a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. If I have something like 3x minus 4 squared, once again, if you're not comfortable with the formula, absolutely multiply it out. But for the formula, I need a to be 3x and b to be 4. So now I have a squared, which is 3x squared, minus 2 times a, which is 3x, times b, which is 4, plus b squared, so 4 squared. That gives me a 9x squared. 2 times 3 times 4 is 24x, and 4 squared is 16. So I have my solution here.